do something bad to us, we are going to do things to you that have never been done before.
We the people tell the government what to do. It doesn't tell us. We the people are the driver. The government is the car. And we decide where it should go and by what route to do. We the people are free. And I hope we have once again reminded people that man is not free unless government is limited.
Oh, there I am, hiding down the bottom again. How are you, folks? No, wrong one. Try that one instead. There you go. Pop me back up. How are you? Having a good day? Sorry I missed you yesterday. Sometimes life just gets in the way. You know how it works. So my apologies for that. We got a bit to catch up on today, but really last night's show would have really probably only covered what is already pretty well known about what happened at Bondi, and there weren't too many more news stories outside the world condemning Anthony Albanese and the Labor government of this country for what they've allowed to have happen here. So we'll talk more about that as the show progresses. Lady Radar Rose was first in the house tonight. Nice to have you aboard, and nice and early you were too, up past 5 or thereabouts. The lovely Connie was second in, only missing by a 15th. Hope you and Alan are doing okay, Dal. The lovely Deb Shepard. Shippard, I didn't say Shep, I said Shippard, I just said it badly, all right, just saying. Andrew, Tim is in the house, good on you, mate, and Vitality Info, good to have you in too. Nice to see you popping up more regularly. Maybe you've been watching on Rumble, but now you're able to pop in that way. And Black Sheep in Taswegialand, congratulations, mate. I know you are smiling today, as anybody who bought silver back in the day is. Yes, silver has hit $100 an ounce today. I think at the moment it's just bounced back fractionally, just to 99 and a bit. I've got one of these screens here that says 99.17. There you go. That's at ainsleyBullion.com.au. Of course, you can buy online there. And I went and said in a Facebook post today when it cracked $100 and went up to about 105, I saw it's been through that $100 barrier at least twice that I'm aware of this afternoon. And I would expect tonight it will break through it. Tomorrow morning when you wake up, it might be 101, 102, potentially even higher, because what is happening in other parts of the world and the restraint mechanisms that have been open to the banks previously and the markets previously to hide their losses in silver, well, that's not available to them anymore. The world has woken up to the value of silver and just how important it is to industry. And industry now are industry have always been the biggest buyers of precious metals, particularly silver. But now there is a shortage. So there goes your electric cars. There goes, just about anything electronic, because it's all got so much silver in it. So therefore, the demand for silver will go through the roof. That's why people who have been stacking for years, and there are people who've been stacking since silver was $17 an ounce, or $6. I think I know people who have been stacking since it was $13 an ounce. You can obviously see the realization of profit they're going to have through there. Now, clearly, if you've still got those bars that you bought at 13 or 17 or 25 or 39 or $45 an ounce, you are doing really, really well. The fact of the matter is most of this growth has occurred in a very short span of time. In fact, silver year to date has grown 127, nearly 128% year to date. That's just mind-blowing. Can it keep going? Because this is where I'm hearing from people who are who say, oh, no, well, I've missed it now. It's going to drop, it's going to drop, it's going to drop. No, it's not. I don't believe it will, not for some time. And when it does drop, it isn't going back to $35 an ounce. It won't even go back to $100 an ounce, simply because the demand for silver is so strong. industry requires so much of it, the price will skyrocket. I believe, and this isn't advice or anything, it's just from what I've done, my studies, and what I've heard talking to people, not just Ainslie Bullion people, but other people as well, listening to others from around the world. It's an unstoppable train at the moment, silver, absolutely unstoppable, and that train is going up. So even at $100 an ounce, get in on it. Get in on it. If I had any money at all, I would be buying it now, even at the price of whatever it is right now, $99.17. I would be all over it, because that price is, that could be the next $17 buy. Put it that way. All right. And given the way that silver and gold and platinum's jumped 3% today. Platinum has broken all the records as well. I mean, gold and silver have both risen today. Gold, what did it say gold was there before? Did we take much of a notice? There you go, $6,520.43. So gold has jumped another $130 since yesterday, and the arrow is pointing up. All indications are that gold will be going up as well. They usually don't go up in tandem, usually one, then the other. So silver has had another little burst. We'll see whether or not it can be maintained overnight. And who knows? Many of you may be able to afford a little extra in your Santa sock this year because of it. Now, the temptation is, when you've bought it $26 or $25 or $17 an ounce, to go out and sell some and have a good Christmas. Maybe go on a holiday and, enjoy some of the spoils, if you like, of saving it for so long. I can't tell you not to do that. I would suggest to you, though, do not go out and sell it all. In fact, if you are going to go out and dip into your stack in any way, shape, or form, I would suggest you spend or take out no more than, at the very most, 25% of it, and use that. Now, that might mean that the holiday you thought you were going to have in the early part of next year has to be curtailed until the early part of next year, 2027, because by then, I believe, you'll be able to afford a much bigger, nicer holiday. So I would temper the fact that you should not, while we're saying buy, I understand that there are people who have to sell for whatever reason, and Christmas is one of those reasons. All the bills come in. Of course, if you've got kids, it's much harder to just, go very modest in what you're doing for Christmas when there's kids around. I'm not saying that you're buying them the world's most expensive presents, but you're doing the best that you can for them, and that usually means at this time of year that other things get left behind, including the bills. So we know how tough it is this time of year, and well, you could make it a little bit easier for yourself by spending $2 and hopefully winning a $750 cash influx into your account immediately through our lottery. The Good Samaritan Donkey Sanctuary will benefit, so too will the Voice of Freedom, to the tune of looking after our servers and that kind of thing. But the rest of it goes to the Donkey Sanctuary, and you would find $750 in your kick pretty handy, I imagine, in the lead up to Christmas in the last week. So we need to jump on that and get it rolled over in the next day or two, and that $750 will be in your account. If you don't win that, you might win the 1 ounce of silver in the Byron Bob Voice of Freedom pack, and we'll see if we can't get that to you before Christmas as well, although Christmas mail, I think, has slowed things down just a little bit, which is making it difficult. I want to thank Vince for popping in and putting all the comments up tonight. Not that I've actually been reading them, but thank you so much. Deb, you're smiling. I'm pleased to hear that. That's great. There are a lot of people. I've had a lot of people. I feel really good about it, and then I go away and think about it, and I think, bugger, I really did miss the boat. But for the longest time, while I was telling you to go and invest in silver and gold, I couldn't. I didn't have any money to do so. And I've never had any money to do so, really, until my mum gave me some money a couple of years ago, and I put that in. But unfortunately, I had to sell most of that back just to keep Voice of Freedom happening and on the road and all that kind of thing. I've since been given, a lot of you have given me, silver along the way. And when I say a lot, it's not huge amounts of silver. Please don't think that. But I haven't given away, or haven't sold, rather, any of the silver that I've been given. So I've got a lot of coins from various parts of the country, or various parts of the world, rather. And I'm very grateful for what I've got. I've been able to add a little bit to it. And certainly with the uptake that we've seen in the price, I've been able to get a little bit of profit, but I'd be stupid to go out with the amount of silver that I have to go and sell it and then say, whoa, yip, yeah, look what I've got, a few $1,000s to go and party with over Christmas. Well, I've given up on partying, and Christmas isn't that huge in our family these days. No little kids to look after, so it's a pretty modest affair. And I won't be spending any of my silver on Christmas gifts as such, but I might make some Byron Bob's presents, which I think is a great thing that you can do for family at Christmas this year. Even the 1/10 Byron Bobs, they look spectacular. You can buy rolls of 15 of them at ainslieBullion.com.au. I can't tell you exactly what the price is at the moment, but it's a very cheap way of buying them. And if you've got, young ones, kids, they're great for adults as well. Everybody knows the value of silver. And right now, those 1/10 each are worth probably, I haven't looked, but probably $15 plus. So it's worthwhile getting a hold of some of those, particularly if all the lights go off and the banks close, as they are apt to do from time to time. All right, enough sermonizing. Let's get into this whole media scenario that's being presented to us, and it is everywhere. The worst offenders for it at the moment that I'm seeing are news.com.au and Sky News, but that might be only because they're probably the two mainstream news services I see most. Anti-Semitism. We have been shamed, cowered, embarrassed into not being able to criticize Jewish anything for most of our lives. This is on the back of, the Holocaust stories coming from Germany after the Second World War, and of course the history books that were written by the victors, I'll point out, after the Second World War. There has been so much hidden from us about that war that it's quite staggering. But once you reveal just that one small snippet of our history, it is a very large shake to people's cognitive dissonance and a huge wake-up call to their hitherto brainwashed mind. But you've got to force yourself to look, because we've been programmed, A, not to look. And if B, we fail at A and we wind up going at looking, then B, we are programmed to come up with excuses for things that we see that don't make sense. You've got to deprogram yourself from those sorts of thoughts, and then you can move on. But anti-Semitism is a word that's being used a lot in our media, and we are being accused as a nation of being anti-Semitic. All Australians are anti-Semitic on the back of a shooting with two Muslims pointing guns at Jews, but it's Australians who are anti-Semitic. Anyway, the word anti-Semitic's being thrown around a lot. This is just a bit of a grab from news. This one might be Sky, actually. David Littleproud demands PM recalls Parliament to tackle main anti-Semitism scourge. Yep, yeah. Celebrity chef's Jewish bakery closing after 2 years of anti-Semitic harassment. It wouldn't be because 2 years of the bullshit that's gone on in Sydney, the rents, the protests, all the other crap. You don't think that would have had anything to do with it? No, probably not. And then just to get a little bit of an idea here, It starts at the top. Pressure builds on Albanese government to respond to anti-Semitic failures. Public outrage over PM's garden party with Jewish leaders after failures on anti-Semitism. Albanese talking about gun control to distract from unchecked anti-Semitism. Frydenberg to make return to politics after impassioned speech on, you guessed it, anti-Semitism. I could have gone on. There are a lot more. Oops. We'll get to that bit in a minute. So what is Semitism? What is anti-Semitism? Where does the word come from and how does it, get to mean so much in our lives? Well, this is what it means. Semitism, or Semitic races, is an outdated term for peoples speaking Semitic languages like Arabic, Hebrew, and Aramaic. It originates in the Middle East, the Horn of Africa, including Arabs, Jews, Assyrians, Aramaeans, Ethiopians, and even goes back to ancient groups like the Phoenicians. However, linguists now prefer Semitic-speaking peoples as race is a social construct, and Semites aren't a single biological race, but share linguistic, cultural ties through the term anti-Semitism, although the term anti-Semitism specifically targets Jewish people. And it does specifically target Jewish people. We'll get to that in a minute as to why. This came from one of you. Don't know how the government can say it was an act of anti-Semitism. Both Jew and Arab are Semitic by definition. The people must know this. This is a family feud. Abraham had 2 sons to 2 women. Sarah is a sister and Hagar is sister's or wife's handmaiden. The average Joe does not realize this, and nobody is talking about this. Israel commits genocide in the Gaza Strip, and Islam is no better. So, Semitism, anti-Semitism. Where did it come from? Well, the word anti-Semitism came up from a guy in 1879. His name was Wilhelm Marr. And the word he came up with was anti-Semitismus. Yes, I know it sounds weird. Anti-Semitismus. It was intended as a racial justification for Jew hatred. It was misused as a linguistic term, Semitic. It was quickly adopted across Europe, and today it refers exclusively to anti-Jewish prejudice. But that isn't what it started out as. It started out as a way of identifying people who spoke or came from certain areas. What anti-Semitism means? Well, it means hostility, prejudice, or discrimination against Jews, as Jews, whether as a religion, an ethnicity, a culture, or a people. It includes stereotypes about Jews, conspiracy theories about Jewish control. And remember that one, right? So you are anti-Semitic if you're bringing up conspiracy theories about Jewish control. Hatred or violence towards Jews, denying the Holocaust, treating Jews as a collective enemy. Anti-Semitism targets Jewish people as a group. And we have, if you haven't been watching this show terribly long, you need to brush up on the difference between a Zionist and a Jew. Zionists work in a very different fashion. What does anti-Zionism mean? Well, an opposition to Zionism, which is, well, what is Zionism? Zionism is a political idea. It is political policy and idolation that Jews have a right to national self-determination in their ancestral homeland, which they claim is Israel. Anti-Zionism is about a political ideology or the state of Israel, not Jews as a people. People can be anti-Zionist for several different reasons. A belief that no ethnic or religious group should have a nation state, Palestinian solidarity or criticism of Israeli government policies, opposition to nationalism in general, or theological reasons, like some religious Jews, including some Orthodox groups, oppose Zionism on spiritual grounds. And there is a reason for that, as we've discussed with Zionism many, many times. Where do they overlap and where they don't? Well, You can be critical of Israel without being anti-Semitic. You can be anti-Semitic without mentioning Israel. You can be anti-Zionist in a way that becomes anti-Semitic if it targets Jews as Jews. The distinction comes down to who or what is being criticized. The people, well, that's anti-Semitism. The political ideology, the government, all that crap, well, that's anti-Zionism because the government is a Zionist government. So why do some groups intentionally blur the line between the two groups? Well, to protect Jewish communities from rising anti-Jewish hatred. They fear extreme anti-Israel rhetoric can disguise anti-Semitism, which I guess it probably could. To discourage attacks on Israel's legitimacy. If opposing Zionism is equated with bigotry, then the Israeli state becomes harder to criticize or to delegitimize. To gain international political support, labeling all anti-Zionism as anti-Semitic can mobilize allies and isolate critics. It has an effect of legitimate political criticism of Israel that can be dismissed as a hatred of Jews. So, yeah, there are quite a number of groups who have been involved with Zionism and Israel over the years. One of those groups, which they are touting at the moment that they would like to bring back to life, is the Jewish Defense League. Now, Carl Wilhelm, this fella here, in 1879, came up with the idea that this is how life, the universe, and everything would be regarding Israel or Jews. And anti-Semitic talk would be, well, the words anti-Semitic would almost totally relate to Jews. And over the years, it has stopped referring to anything else. So the meaning of it has been engineered into something other than what it was originally intended. I just wanted to make sure that you understood that. The Jewish Defense League, it was big in the 60s, 70s, and the early 80s. They were a much more militant group who were quite aggressive. In fact, the Jewish Defense League was charged a number of times with bombing offenses. They blew up Arab-American business partnerships and businesses like that. They killed people. They were quite strong in what they were doing. Now, Israel as a nation eventually pushed back against the Jewish Defense League and the Jewish Defense Organization, which was a splinter group from the Jewish Defense League. The fellow that started the Jewish Defense Organization was a fellow called Mordecai Levi, or Levi, I don't know, L-I-V-I. And he was a particularly sadistic bastard. He was very happy to attack anybody in any way, shape, and form, using any tactic that would gain a positive outcome for Israel, for the Jewish nation, for Zion. Sorry, a bug. Oh, well, he didn't taste too nice, but got him. So they became quite a aggressive organization, and Mordecai himself went to jail on a number of occasions for bombings and other desecrations, if you like. So now we're asking, or now the Jewish population of Australia is suggesting that the Jewish Defense League be allowed to come back into being. Well, okay, I actually believe that there is a level of the Jewish Defense League still in operation in Australia. There were a number of Jewish security people in the crowd at that event the other day. There are always Jewish security on site at these sorts of events. The fact that there were two young police officers there only would have worked as a backup to them. Now, Israel defense operations being what they are would mean that these security officers would be identified easily to people of the Jewish faith, but they're probably going to look, pretty much dressed in civvies to you, me, and anybody else who doesn't know what to look for. Would they be allowed to carry weapons? No, they would not be allowed to carry weapons unless they were a licensed security guard, in which case they have to open carry. So I don't think that would have been the case, that they would have had weapons, but they are all trained, highly trained, and will have been IDF trained at some point, if not Mossad trained. So having a weapon, not necessarily an issue to stop them acting. And from what I saw, many of the older Jewish gentlemen, including the fellow who picked up the brick and threw it at the older shooter, this gentleman wound up being shot twice and dying. If you see the previous shots, they're calling about how brave he is and all that kind of thing. Well, this is a man who never flinched when the gunshots were coming his way. This is a man who stood in front of the business end of a weapon before. He's heard the sounds before. He wasn't shaken or unmotivated or even slightly inclined to duck. However, that was prior to him being shot, prior to him throwing the brick. He got himself into the shooter's line of fire after he threw the brick at the shooter's father, and then casually walked back behind the tree where the gentleman, how hard is it to forget a man who's got the same name twice? The hero who disarmed Saeed and then didn't shoot him. He got shot as well. I believe that he got shot while the shooter was trying to shoot the fella in the white shirt that had thrown the brick at his dad. The fella in the white shirt was undercover, hiding behind the same tree as the hero, but then decided for whatever reason to get up and try and walk. He'd been hit in, I think, his right arm, and he decided to get up and try and run back down toward the beach or back down deeper into the park. And I think he took 3 steps and got shot and dropped. So terribly sad, but this is not a man who I think spent a life cowering in a lockbox somewhere, wondering what was going to happen to him. I think he was somebody who was out there fighting it, and so too to our hero. In fact, there was another hero who was on the bridge. He was shot at by police before being thrown on the ground by police, and then having a whole bunch of Aussie heroes who raced up after they figured the gunshots had stopped and tried kicking the heads in of those who were pulling the trigger. Those boys got a bit confused and started attacking this Good Samaritan too. That fella apparently has a legal battle to stay in the country. He has been found, for whatever reason, not to be a person that the Department of Immigration wants in the country, and they have pretty much ordered his removal. He has legal support to try and make that change. He has an Australian wife and 2 kids, apparently, with a third coming. And I'm not sure which shithole in the world they were going to try and send him back to. But now, of course, his lawyer has put out a call that some compassion needs to be shown. This was a brave man who can be seen working his way up through the cars to try and get, like he's trying to find out where the shooters are and trying to figure out how he can get to them. His intent was always to get to them, I believe that. You can see it in the video. So that's a brave person who does that. And whether he got there too late and wound up getting punched and shot at, well, that is as it is. But should that action, should we be rising up and saying, hey, look, let him stay? Let him stay. Because we don't know why the government have issued a get-out-of-town order on him so far. It's been my understanding that the government only issues those kind of orders to good people. There are so many examples where they have, gone to deport good people and fought all the way through the courts to the tunes of hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they deport good people. The bad ones get to stay for whatever reason. I know they get rid of some, but not enough. nowhere near enough. And there's too much compassion. Oh, we can't send him home. He's lived here for 15 years. Well, you should have thought about that if you wanted to come here and be a fucking thief or a murderer or a drug dealer. You know, go back and do it in your own country. We don't need that shit here. Same as we don't need this anti-Semitic rant going on. And anti-Semitic rants are going to keep going on until the government is pulled up on it. They have been so ineffectual, so startlingly bad in every aspect of what they do. Now, of course, running for cover. Thankfully, people have taken up the call to shame these politicians when they poke their heads out in public. What happened with Tony Burke, who turned up very, very, very early, apparently, whether it was Tuesday morning to pay his respects. There was still people there who shamed him, named him, shamed him. They've done that to that horrible fuck Yuri cow. And that should happen every time you see that person in public. In fact, anytime you see a Labor or a Green or anybody who has gone on, and I think the Liberal Party in great part have supported some of what's happened, then shame them. Let them know that you will never, ever support their party again. Let them know that you have seen the damage that their party is prepared to do to our nation. They have separated themselves from us, and now the nation screams for some actual leadership. Can we get it? I don't know. Can there be another dismissal? What did Malcolm Fraser do? He blocked supply. He was able to block supply because he had certain numbers in the lower house, I guess. But he was able to block supply until the government acquiesced, and they refused. So I think he went to the Governor General and said, well, we're going to keep blocking supply. They're not going to move, so you've got to dismiss the government. Now, I don't know if that's the only trigger. It might well be. How can we get this government sacked? All right, but then be careful what you wish for, because there will be something of a vacuum. Now, that means that the Liberal Party, the National Party, and One Nation are going to step up very hard, and there will be a shitload of others. Probably Palmer of United will come back into the fray, quite possibly, because he'll sniff the chance of being able to help. And all it will do is defray the vote once again. Pauline Hanson has been speaking extremely strongly. Pauline demands, the Aussies demand Pauline be made Prime Minister. Well, it was a very good speech that she gave at Bondi, and she's been giving very good speeches, even if she sounds very nervous or old doing it. I'm not quite sure which way it is. Or her voice quivers with anger, and I'm pretty sure that's what it is. Her voice quivers with anger while she's holding back giving these speeches. Now, is she strong enough to be a leader of this country? Do we trust her with... Well, we certainly trust her on immigration. That is a given. But we'd have to trust her on everything else to do with the country as well. But now she's got Barnaby in, her corner as well. There may be no solution to the problem, says Barnaby, of people who hate Australia once they are living in Australia. But finding farmers who love Australia and removing their rifles is not the answer. And it's an excuse for being too afraid to deal with the actual problem. Decisive action is removing firearms from those who have a reason to murder. Decisive action is not bringing in people from any corner of the world who have a culture at odds with the Australian peaceful egalitarian culture. Decisive action is exploring, then explaining how we failed in following following through on the information that was known about the Bondi mass murderers. Decisive action is not just saying that you love Australia, it's stopping the demonstration of those who self-evidently don't. There will be an intense cynicism of any politician who goes to the podium with merely platitudes. If you talk about values and principles but can't describe what they are, because by doing so some will dislike you because of them, well, then you have no values and principles. If you tell the listeners the bleeding obvious of what is acceptable after an atrocity, but have no compunction to address it so as to prevent it happening again, then you lack either the conviction or the courage, or both. I think Barnaby spoke pretty well there too. There's no doubt Barnaby Joyce adds a bit of depth to the One Nation Party. Malcolm Roberts, I believe, for the most part, I think is a very good man, and has done his best to try and find out about things like the 28. But I am pretty confident that those sort of things are being hidden by the secret keepers of the Australian government, or governments. I don't know if that's the best way to put it. But the secret keepers are the bureaucrats. They know where all the bodies are buried and all the documents that nobody wants found. They know exactly where to hide them because they have been hiding them just in this Bondi massacre case. The Australian government, for whatever reason, has chosen not to be honest with the Australian people and explain to us exactly who the shooters were. It took an Indian newspaper to do that, despite denials from Indian press, I beg your pardon, and silence from the Australian government. It now turns out that the father had an Indian passport. And they had to find that out from the Philippines Immigration Department. Yeah. How? Well, somebody rang the Philippine Immigration Department and said, you had this bloke in your country a couple of weeks ago. What flavoured passport did he come in on? Oh, he came in on an Indian national passport. Okay. Kind of changes things a little bit, doesn't it? Because we weren't expecting a radicalised Indian, I don't think, attacking Jews. I would have expected a radicalised Indian to attack Pakistanis, to be honest. But now we have radicalised Indians who seem to be self-radicalising because at this point in time, the hitherto useless ASIO have not been able to tell us any further details. This from a federal agency, which the AFP head said they were going to have a very thorough, very transparent, 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week investigation that the public would gain full access to. Well, I don't know. I haven't seen or heard any statements from ASIO. I haven't seen or heard any further statements from that cow that's running the AFP these days, and we certainly don't trust her for a variety of reasons. But it'd be nice to see if she comes good. There is also some significant questions raised now about our Indian immigration. It no longer has to be just our immigration levels because our immigration intake is predominantly made up of Indians currently. In fact, a number of states of Australia are working very hard promoting their universities and other ways that you can come to Australia and live and gain yourself a permanent residency visa and basically become an Aussie, as long as you remember to vote for Labor, because it is Labor who have allowed you this great thing you'll be able to come in with. I hate these pricks. So I want to know how an Indian national was able to get a gun license here in Australia without being an Australian citizen. I'd also like to know how an Indian national gets a gun license when his son is on the ASIO watch list. This is a serious failure on behalf of our security services. I'm talking ASIO, ASIS, and the AFP. It is disgusting to think that ASIO has a folder on the son and it never clicked that the father might be involved as well. And the father had 6 weapons in the house. Please stop calling these weapons high-powered weapons. They weren't high-powered anything. They were rifles. They were shotguns. They weren't any magnificent sniper rifle. They weren't any huge, great over high-powered thing. They were a bit better than a 22, I'll admit. But the shotgun is no more high-powered than a normal shotgun. Yes, it makes a loud bang, and depending on what slugs you're using, and I don't know what slugs they were using. Now, if they were using a solid, that would make a hell of a mess when it hit someone, but they were shooting people 40 meters away or further, and I'm thinking with a shotgun pellet, or shotgun, you're going to need to be a lot closer than that. That's why I think they both started out with rifles, and the shotgun was picked up by the father again when he had his first weapon taken off him by the couple on the side of the road. He had a rifle on him then, and those couple were then shot on the road, at the side of the road. He picked up the weapon and kept going. I think that weapon jammed, and he put it down at the edge of the bridge, walked up, picked up the shotgun, came back down the bridge and walked down into the park where we saw the other hero take the weapon off him there. The poor old bloke must have been having pretty shit luck. He must have thought Allah had closed his eyes on him and turned his back for a while, because every time he picked up a weapon, somebody came along and smacked him in the side of the head and took it off him. So anyway, they're not smart enough to say, oh, I've learned my lesson, I'll walk on. No, none of that. So these signs, and signs much like it, are appearing all over Sydney. They are unmissable. They are on overpasses, on main thoroughfares. They are hanging off balconies in Bondi particularly, but now showing up in other places around Sydney as well. And, of course, there is a very large warning going out. Well, the warning hasn't gone out yet, but there is a large investigation now that's been put in place for any kind of threat that might materialize over the Christmas New Year period. So this is probably one of the nice things that seems to be happening. Albanese is being absolutely mocked for blaming right-wing extremism and anti-Semitism for what happened in Sydney at Bondi. It may well have been anti-Semitism that sent an Indian national and his Australian-born son over the edge and off to their 77 virgins. Although one of them only got there, and I doubt that Dad's going to get them somehow. I don't believe that we are going to have a situation. I won't say that. I'll get myself in trouble. Anthony Albanese, the Defence Minister, Miles, Penny Wong, the entire Greens, the entire Labor Party are all responsible for what has happened here. The people of Australia need to make it very clear that their behaviour is unacceptable. Their running of the country is unacceptable, and they have now proven they are incapable of looking toward what the people want. They are simply working to a different agenda. And I'll tell you how deep this agenda goes. I was contacted yesterday by a law firm in Canberra that want to start looking at a action against the people that are spraying our skies. And they asked me if I could provide any information about who's doing it, what's being sprayed, what are the damaging effects that are being had, are there people who are actually suffering from these effects, and a few other questions. So I happily replied, but while replying to them, it became very obvious to me, and I think it will to them, that finding someone to sue is not possible. as with so many things with this particular government, but I'm not going to limit it to just Labor. Liberal governments have done this to us as well. It has been successive flavours of government dating back to the 60s that have put us in this position when it comes to things like chemtrails. Why? Well, in answer to the first question, who's doing it? Or which Australian signed off on it? No singular Australian signed off on it unless it was the Environment Minister. He would have signed an agreement with the UN or the WHO, or probably both, that put us as part of a huge group of countries that allowed our skies to be overflown and used for things like food modification and weather modification. Rainmaking, it would have been called back in the 60s, because that's what they were experimenting with how to do. Can we make rain? Well, they have grown. They're not just doing rainmaking anymore. They can make rain, they can make rain by the river load and then some. And they have proven that to us on a variety of occasions. But those aircraft doing the spraying are, in most instances, internationally privately owned aircraft or military. And there are some civilian jetliners who are also doing it. The vast majority of that spraying is being done by private aviation companies and military. Military specifically from countries a long way from us. I'm talking Canada does a lot of the work over us. Some of the Scandinavian countries fly their aircraft over us. Germany has its aircraft fly over our airspace on a regular basis. Now, sometimes these aircraft land, sometimes they don't. That would indicate military aircraft that can be refueled. So, or some of these military aircraft can carry enough fuel to travel a great distance, stay in the air for 26, 28 hours, 30 hours, some of them. So how do you find who to charge for that? And then if you were, as I said in an email back to them this morning, if you were really thinking about who and how to charge one, and if it was going to be a government minister, well, I think they're protected. But it wouldn't be the minister. It would be a government decision he just signed on behalf of the Australian government. So that would mean you'd need to take on the whole cabinet and successive cabinets for those who made the decisions and kept making those decisions, okay? So how have they kept making those decisions? Well, there are senior politicians in every party who make their way through. And at times, there have been huge turns around at the ballot box where very senior and a lot of very senior people in the party have lost their positions, therefore lost their access. And that means that the secret has to be told to whoever's left in the party, how the game really works, because it is the bureaucrats and the senior politicians from all sides of politics that are required to keep this going. Not just going, they're required to keep it funded. Every time a government changes at the ballot box, the politicians, bureaucrats, do not change. There might be one or two hand-placed, bureaucrats to go into the PM's office and head of Treasury and those sorts of things. But by and large, the bureaucratic force that has been in place since day dot has been there. That's why getting into the bureaucratic service was always so good, because if you could start your career as an underthing in the mailroom and work your way up to department head, well, you could wind up like any number of those very strange women who front estimates and never seem to have any answers to the questions being asked by the senators. Interesting, isn't it, that this Labor government has the highest number of non-answered questions in Australian political history. That's non-answered questions under Senate estimates, which are questions that have to be answered. But I know this open and transparent Labor government isn't open and transparent in any way, shape or form. And now, of course, because an Indian national and his half-wit son decided to shoot up a bunch of Israelis celebrating Hanukkah on an Australian beach, all Australians are going to be made suffer with more draconian gun reform. Some of the things being touted: only 3 weapons you will be allowed to own. You will not be allowed to store those weapons at home. They will have to be stored at a club, and a variety of other constraints that are going to be placed upon you. It wasn't an Australian who went out and shot these people. It was a mad rabbit Indian. How about we start looking at how many imported people we have in this country? Let's start with the ones that aren't Australian citizens, like old Saeed. Let's start with them and take the guns off them, shall we? Before you start taking them off the farmers, before you start taking them off the recreational hunters, before you start taking them off the pistol shooters, the long range, the long arm shooters, the clay target shooters, before you start disarming the nation again. And this plan is cowardice. It is an easy, knee-jerk reaction that will only make a moron happy. A moron who can't think any further than a knee-jerk reaction. Well, somebody who just says, oh, well, taking more guns off the street is the answer. It's not, because it's not the criminals that'll be giving up the guns. During the last amnesty in 1996, when John Howard took all our weapons off us, do you have any idea how many of those actually made it back onto the streets? Thousands of them. How? They were resold. Now, yeah, there was a big inquiry into it when they found out about it, and yeah, heads rolled, but it happened. Why wouldn't it happen again this time round? Because God knows we've proven how corrupt the police force is and how corrupt the government is at every friggin' level. And it gets worse, folks. It could get a lot worse. But I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to let Craig Cole tell you just how bad it could get.
The Communist Labor Party want to dig up the bones of the parasite. This is what their plan is. Now, I come across a couple of messages the other day, and I've been doing some digging since. Some phone calls to sources, and every one of them confirms what I'm about to say. Whether this eventuates or not isn't the issue. This is what Labor have planned. Now, for us here in Victoria, this is, yeah. So, look, my sources on this may be barking up the wrong tree, but a couple of them are pretty good. They're hardly wrong, hardly missed the mark. So there'll be a situation early next year where a federal Labor MP will resign, leaving the seat vacant, therefore requiring a by-election. The Labor candidate that would be put up as a federal candidate, and they'll make this happen however way they need to make it happen, the good old communist dictator Labor Party. The candidate that will be put up at the federal level is no other than that gerbil parasite cocksmack Daniel Andrews. That's right, good old shoelaces. Just when you think his old decrepit parasitic kitty fiddling bones are dead and buried. No. So that's their plan. It gets better. Apparently part of the plan is that Albanese will resign as Prime Minister or step down or whatever. And good old Shoelaces will be then appointed as the Prime Minister. A few of you may scoff. Don't shoot the messenger. I'm just giving you the information. Now, if this turns out to be correct, which among the Labor Party back officers, oh, by the way, you've got some leaks, Labor Party, at a federal and state level. I just thought I'd let you know, because you're not as tight as what you think you are, and you're not as effective with your bullying techniques for everyone to keep their mouth shut as what you think you are either, you morons. But then again, you are part of the Labor Party. That's the plan. So I'll just reiterate, I'll just back over that again and run you through it very quickly. There'll be a by-election. One of the federal Labor members will be tapped on the shoulder and told to sacrifice his seat, step down, whatever. A by-election has to be held at a federal level. Now, I'm understanding, I'm led to believe that this will take place in New South Wales, because if they try to do it in Victoria, there's no way to get in. Although they do cheat their ass off at elections. I've got first-hand proof of that, running as an independent candidate, twice, state and federal level. First-hand proof, which I've spoken about before. If you'd like me to mention it again, and what actually happened at the last state election here in Victoria, quite happy to do another.
Yep. So that's Craig's bit of news. Like he said, take it or leave it, don't shoot the messenger. But what a plan that would be for Labor to try and enact. To put Dan Andrews, parachute him into a safe, I guess, Labor seat in Sydney or somewhere in New South Wales, and then put him in as Prime Minister. I don't know that it's possible. Dan Andrews is going to face, he's facing a civil trial at the moment, but I'm pretty confident they're going to face some sort of criminal charges about that kid that they knocked off the bike some years ago. That's going to fill up a whole heap of his day, and I don't know that we could have an Australian Prime Minister on those sorts of charges, having that sort of over his head. I also believe that if Dan Andrews was to be parachuted, taken out of Victoria and parachuted into a safe seat in New South Wales somewhere, every motel, hotel, caravan park and public space would be taken up with Victorians who would move to that seat to make sure that every person in that seat knew exactly what sort of bastard they were going to be allowed to try and represent them if they put their vote to him. So I would think getting Dan Andrews elected anywhere other than the fastest way to hell is just a non-starter. But the Labor Party have done stupider things, haven't they? They need a sacrificial lamb. They want Albo to go out on a high because it makes it look like he's been victorious in his term, so to speak. And then they'll need a sacrificial lamb to throw into that position, because we all know that the Labor Party, should we get a fair election next time round, are going to be gutted at the polls. I would hope that the Liberal Party would find themselves equally without bowels. They've certainly got no heart, so you may as well get gutted as well. And we may well find ourselves with Pauline and her lot running the country. And I know a lot of people right now have warm, squishy feelings about that. I've got to admit, I do to a certain extent. I also have certain worries. Pauline has been very supportive of digital ID. Pauline has been very supportive of a number of things that we, I speak generally, we the people who follow this show and others like mine do not approve of. We are not fans of, and she has never explained her stance as to why she did those things. Is this action going to be enough to give her the traction that she needs and the votes that she needs? Is it going to give her the candidates that she needs? Because if One Nation are going to sweep this country, they need to put candidates in every seat for both the lower house and the Senate. And I think they stand a very, very good chance of ducks in the lot right now. If there was to be an election held tomorrow, you wouldn't be going to the Liberal, the National, or the Labor Party for it, would you? Or the Greens? God help us. I mean, yes, Pauline might need to get the support of some of the other independents to get her across the line. Don't think that'd be a bad thing. I think most of those independents will see the light of day given the current, or sniff the political wind, so to speak, and see where it's going. But Dan Andrews could be a very interesting sacrificial plant. Give him, like they did with Kevin Rudd, give him the last few months and then put Julia Gillard back in and let her be sacrificed. Or was it Rudd? I don't know, forget which way it worked. Don't care. They both were horrifying people. Pauline Hanson strongly opposed the digital ID introduction. I'm sorry, Vince, I must have missed that. There's been quite a few things she has not opposed. And look, you also have to be mindful of how little can get achieved. When I was in Canberra recently and I got to go and sit in the Senate and watch how things work, if you don't have the numbers, you are just treated with absolute contempt. Nothing you say has any bearing on those who have the numbers. They've already got their plan in mind. Regardless of what you bring up, put in front of them, they're just going to knock it on the head. And as we have seen on numerous occasions, they are quite prepared to stymie debate on any topic they don't want to be questioned on. They don't want to have to debate. And, I find it quite disgusting that we do not have a mechanism in this country to get rid of a lying government. How many things has this government introduced that you never heard about before going to the last election where they supposedly won in a landslide? How many things with deep and ongoing impact to you personally, your family, and maybe generations of your family? Did they tell you they were going to do that? No, they didn't. Do you think Pauline will? Well, I think there's half a chance if Pauline was, and I think along with Mr. Roberts and a few others, I think they could do very well. I've run over an hour, but there is one thing that I want to touch on, and it's another small piece I want to show you. We have spoken about the NDIS rip-off in this show numerous times, and just how abhorrent the Australian government has been encouraging the spending of $2 million a week or more out of one office on NDIS payments.
A registered
Watch
provider
this.
just fined $2.5 million for abuse and neglect and failure to report nearly 2,000 reportable incidents. The abuse was absolutely abhorrent. It was disgusting. Where does that $2.5 million go? These participants, the victims, are going to have to live with this for the rest of their lives. Do they get compensation? Because it's not going to take away the pain. How can this possibly happen? Our peak bodies and our regulators say, well, the only quality provider is a registered provider. Well, bullshit. I am calling bullshit on that. This has to stop. This is more than registration. This is regulation. This is an overhaul of a system in crisis. It is an absolute freaking shit show.
Shit show it is. I am reliably informed that the NDIS is going through something of a routing at the moment. They are also going through their entire database, all of their systems, and are going over practically every case that's ever been put to them as potential fraud again. Now, the NDIS has been able to give a lot of people a lot of work. A lot of people have made a lot of money out of it, particularly if they're a registered organization that has a number of clients. And I know of a couple of organizations who might run 100 plus carers. These are big organizations, and each of them has a plan for each person, what that person can and can't do, and how many holidays they can go away on, and how many people they can take with them on a holiday. And I mean that by care estates. Now, I understand what the lady is saying in that clip by saying, well, you know, what happens to the poor person who's, you know, been left to suffer? Well, I'd guarantee that the 2,000 reportable incidents won't be life-threatening incidents or anything like that. There'll be incidences of things like, oh, well, we spent money here when we shouldn't have, or we spent money there when we shouldn't have. It'll be that kind of incidents. Now, I'm informed that now that Bill Shorten has gone, somebody has taken a role within the organization to clean out the crap and stop the fraud. And that means that we should start seeing a lot more successful prosecutions like this one going through against providers who have been ripping off the Australian people and not caring correctly for those they've been put in charge of. What they've done in many cases is bled the accounts dry of those people. In some cases, those people aren't even able to communicate. They are stuck in a chair grunting and getting their nappy changed every day. But someone's been able to go in and rort the system on their behalf for them. So that now is starting to be tracked down. That gives me some hope that something good is going to come out of this. I get the feeling, though, that the only reason they are doing it is because they are so desperately short of money, they're going to have to start getting it back through fines. And we know that they've been doing that on the roads and cars and God knows whatever for a while now. So maybe now they're going to focus it on the people who have actually been committing some of the greatest thefts in this country, thefts of the people's money. And, you know, obviously putting those they're meant to be caring for in a worse position than they maybe would have been otherwise. It's a disgusting piece of work. Look forward to keeping my eye on that closely and seeing what happens with it as we go forward. I would like to hear if you know of any cases like that going through. I'd love to hear about them. Also, if you have any information about what we've been sprayed with over the last 5 years in particular, I still do have a sample of stuff that was collected in Cooktown. And now that these lawyers have got involved, we might be able to get it tested, because I had no end of trouble getting it tested. Cost, well, admittedly, cost was the big factor initially. Then I had a little windfall and I thought, right, I'll fork out the $3,000 to get it tested. And then they refused me and I couldn't get a lab that would test it for me. So with a bit of luck, with a bunch of lawyers on my side, we may be able to get that tested. That'll give them an idea of what we're being sprayed with. But I think for the most part, Australians know there is a formula, and it's pretty much the same stuff they keep putting out, because that's what reacts best with the HARP heater. Oops, maybe I'm going to spin the head out of those lawyers next year, I can tell you. I did point out in my email, I'm going to say some things to you that you might likely dismiss as conspiracy theory. I urge you not to do that. I urge you to do a little bit of research yourself. So we'll see how it all goes. It's going to be an interesting time. God love you, folks. Thank you for everything. I hope you're working your way through the Christmas traffic, the Christmas shopping, and the Christmas munchies, and getting ready to have friends and family gathered around you in a few days' time. It will be a great time for everybody, I hope, and particularly a great time if you've still got a few bucks and you can go and get into your silver or bullion account at Ainslie Bullion. Pick yourself up a bit of a deal. Just see whether or not it's correct. Oh, look, 99.41. So I think it's on the way back up again. So I think before too much longer, in the next hour or two, it's probably going to bump its way through $100 again. I'd be amazed if tomorrow morning it wasn't over $100 a bit. It might be just under, but it might be over too. Don't forget, thank you, Vince, for checking out our lottery. That is the address where you can get tickets. They're only $2 each, merch.vofhq.com/product/sanctuary-750. If you click on that link, you will go immediately to the page where you can buy up to 20 tickets in our lottery. I'm not exactly sure how many there are left. I haven't got a page up at the moment to tell me, but the faster we can churn this over, we'd love to be able to give Sandy another influx of cash before Christmas. We know that they had huge outgoings only just 10 days ago or so, with the big day there on the property with all the hooves and teeth being done. So if we can help there by providing a few more bales of hay, we would love to do that, but we can only do that with your support. $2 is all it will take, and with a bit of luck, we'll be able to give you $750 or an ounce of silver for your troubles. God love you, folks. Be safe if you're going out and doing anything on the roads. There are less dickheads, I've noticed. I had to do a bit of driving today, and I'll be honest, a trip halfway into Brisbane and back out again, and I only counted 17 dickheads. I thought I was doing pretty well.
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up.
Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life.
It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back.
Does anybody else want to stay?
Let's rock!